Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to the Hot Mic Podcast. The Hot Mic Podcast is where divergent points of view debate and discuss hot topics. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back. I'm Nate the Barbarian, joined by Kevin Aldridge. How you doing, sir?
Doing good. How about yourself?
Good to see you. I think there's a little delay between your audio and your video there, Kevin. Good to see you, Tarris. How you doing, sir?
Hello, everybody. Good to be back on the panel.
And the almighty Phil Hemlich. How you doing, sir?
First of all, I like that title. And Kevin, regardless of your microphone issues, as long as there's not any blockage between your thoughts and your words, then we'll be fine.
Kevin missed that because
every time I make a comment about him, he's not there to enjoy it. I mean, it's a waste of my time.
Yeah, he's spoiling your comedic wit, man.
Yeah.
How dare he do that?
And saying I have a comedic wit is, I would say, being very generous on your part. But thank you.
I'm a very generous barbarian. You know that. You know, it's somewhat of an oxymoron because I'm just a big old soft teddy bear. It is. It really is, actually. We got Kevin back, but he's in black screen. Can't see your video, Kevin. You know what's so funny is like nowadays, this is nothing. But like 10 years ago, if you had a problem like this, you'd be freaking out. Oh, it's not. People are, it happens. People understand these days. I'm not sure. I'm going to go ahead and say the man. Oh, there it is. There it is. What's up, Kevin? Uh-oh. Nope. Yeah, that's not working, bro. All right. We'll see. We'll have to
I can play, Kevin. I know.
There it is.
Kevin got to back up.
I can just use some left wing, as long as I use kind of left wing militant, rhetoric. I get the picture. I can do Kevin.
I'm hearing this awful buzzing noise now.
Yeah, there's something going on outside of my office window here. I don't know if they sandblasting or doing something. So
okay. All right.
yeah,
all right.
so you can do what you need to do on your end, or I'll try to mute when I'm not talking, so you guys don't have to listen to that.
Okay. I don't hear it anymore, so it went away.
Yeah, it goes off and on, so I don't know when they might start back up. They just started as soon as we started this stream. It's been quiet all morning, and now right when we get ready to come on, they decide they want to start doing some work. So
yeah, it's the man. It's the man. It's the man. That's what
it's a conspiracy. There's no question.
Phil
sent them over here. Phil sent them over here so that I can't spout my left wing militant rhetoric.
He did hear.
Yeah, he did hear. Yeah, he did. See, now I caught you.
Okay.
Caught you. Well, for the audience, thank you for being here. I see Brenda and Rachel and Janice and Terry and Regina and Anthony. I really appreciate everybody for being here and spread the word about the show. I really appreciate you and join the conversation. I'll put a link that you can use to join, just like you see here with the video with the crew. You can join the same way, or you can turn the video off and just, share what you have to share just using the audio. But I'll share a link on YouTube and on Facebook in just a second. But a lot of stuff to talk about. Some, hopefully a polite, maybe an impolite mix of what's hot right now, local and national. No way to hit everything because there's so much stuff going on. And we haven't even been talking about Diddy at all. And we still haven't gotten to all the topics. But, there's a lot of stuff going on. I want to jump straight into it and kick things off by talking about what's happening here locally with Hyde Park. I'm not sure if people are aware, but the good folks over at Hyde Park were very upset that there was a development. Many of them feel like the city is forcing this development on Hyde Park Square. And as Donald Trump said recently, I don't like it. They don't like it. They don't like it. And so now they got the necessary petitions to put it before the voters very efficiently. It seemed like I don't know who ran this operation, but whoever ran this operation to get these signatures, they've got a valuable thing that they can do for you because this seemed to be very efficient. They got the necessary signatures. They were validated by the Hamilton County Board of Elections. And so it looks like this will be on the ballot. And someone said that this is not really about, I think it might have been a city council person who said this, I'm paraphrasing roughly, that this whole situation with this being on the ballot, this is not really about Hyde Park. This is like a referendum on development and neighborhoods having the ability to have say-so over the types of developments that happen in their neighborhoods. Do you agree with that? What do you guys think about this? Is this good
Well,
for our local democracy?
but if I can just clarify something, because I've put some, I put a similar thing on the ballot when I first ran for council that probably helped get me elected. Just in case anybody is thinking, oh, this was like a real grassroots movement. Now, which I think it was, but generally to get something on the ballot, you got to pay professional companies to do it. Now, if they somehow got all these with volunteers, great. I've never seen it happen. And to take one of your themes, Nathan, the fact that this was Hyde Park, I'm assuming that everybody kind of split the cost to get paying whoever got the signatures. Again, I can't say that for sure, but my guess is that's what happened. And the fact that they had the resources to do that, probably was pretty significant.
Yeah. Yeah, Nathan, I would agree with you. I do think this is not only a referendum on development, I think it's a referendum on city council and what a lot of residents and neighborhoods feel about this council and maybe even past councils recently unwillingness to listen to the concerns of the community. And so I think it makes a difference the neighborhood that it happened in. I mean, as Phil sort of talks about here, these things aren't cheap and they aren't easy to do. I think in a neighborhood like Hyde Park, which is a more affluent neighborhood in Cincinnati, where folks are able to pool resources and pay for attorneys and things of that nature to make these things happen. Maybe it doesn't happen in another neighborhood where the residents don't have those types of resources at their disposal. But I think whether you agree with the Hyde Park residents or whether you side with the developers, I think what you have to acknowledge here is this is how the system was set up to work. That residents, you do have power. Residents, you do have a say if you disagree with things that your city council or your elected representatives do. You have the ability, to go out and get signatures and put a referendum on the ballot. So this should be a lesson to everyone across the city that if you disagree with the decision that council made, you don't just necessarily have to eat it as a community. If you're able to rally the support and go back and get signatures and put things on the ballot, you can do more than just complain about decisions you don't like from city council. So from that vantage point, I think this is a positive thing of residents exercising their voices and the power and what the system allows them to do. I think what'll be interesting, Nathan, because now this goes up to a vote of the whole city. This isn't just Hyde Park folks who are going to be turning out for this. What I think will be interesting, and I was actually even thinking about writing an opinion column on this, will be how other neighborhood community councils respond. Will they sort of formulate a a wall to go against this zoning? Will Hyde Park Community Neighborhood Council and the other 51 neighborhood councils in Cincinnati, will they back each other up? Because it's Hyde Park now that disagrees with the development, but it could be somebody else's neighborhood later. And so it'll be interesting to see if they will formulate a wall of defense against this to maybe try to get it voted down. And so I'll be interested to see if the community councils will rally together around this to support Hyde Park, to send a message to council and developers that, hey, you're going to have to listen to these neighborhoods. That'll be interesting to see.
Mhm.
I think I mentioned when we talked about this before that, again, I can't verify this, but when 7 members of council vote for something that's opposed by not only a neighborhood, but a fairly influential neighborhood, there's something here going on here that we don't know. I'm guessing that there was legal advice provided to members of council that legally they didn't have the right to do this. If that is the case, I can't prove it. If that's the case, same thing can happen if this thing passes. If the developer has a legal right to whatever they're asking for, they can get it overturned, whether it's passed by council or by initiative.
Something interesting to think about too is with the election coming up and the mayor's election, with this being on the ballot for the entire city to determine now
Are you
could
back
play
to
it.
are you back to pushing that Vance guy you endorsed, Tarris? I mean, is this a backdoor way of doing that? Come clean on this.
Okay, if you want to talk about backdooring, if you
Bowman,
come
I'm
in,
sorry, Bowman.
if you come inside the backside of Dana Avenue and you come down, what is that? There's you go through East Walnut Hills, and you go through Granite Avenue. Granite Avenue, you go through Granite, go east to Walnut Hills, and then you hit Hyde Park, correct? And that's where JD Vance lives. So this could all be, since you want to cut me off, and now let me get into my
Oh,
spiel.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I was teasing. I'm sorry.
This is going to have a direct correlation on how the city votes. They can turn this into a have and have nots. They can turn it into a racial issue. They could turn it into a Democrat Republican issue if they so choose to, because it's just that ripe for the low hanging fruit. From my outside looking in over here in Kentucky.
Yeah, something tells me that unless there's already been some groundwork that's been done to, connect or foster relationships between these various neighborhood councils, something tells me that they will probably, let this kind of stand on its own. People might be looking at the Hyde Park folks suspiciously like, well, why should we come out in full support of you? Where were you when we had these other issues going on? I could see people in Cincinnati having that attitude about it. So, we got silos here, neighborhoods here, people here, you got your circle of friends. So,
I could think it's an opportunity for dog whistles as well, like for the Republican Party, how they're doing things with this Corey Bowman FTAB pure ball race. This could be a definite underground dog whistle. They say, hey, I know you're at Hyde Park, you're probably purple. Let's make a difference and shake up city council and make a difference in this election. That would be the approach that I would take if I was on handling this campaign. I would, because like I said before, we were talking about this. If you look at the map during the week out turn primary, it was the outskirts that Bowman went. So if he ran outskirts in Hyde Park, being a huge voter block, if they can get garner 10,000 signatures for an initiative, that's a huge voter block. And if either party misses on the opportunity to take advantage of this situation, it'd be a miss on either party that doesn't take advantage.
Yeah. Corey Bowman, is it Bowman or Bowman?
I'm not sure.
Bowman.
Corey Bowman is barely, when I mean barely, qualified to run against Avtab Pureval. I heard him on the Lincoln Ware show. It might have been the last week. And it was just terrible. I mean, they're in no way, in no measure, by nobody's imagination, except for the people in Corey Bowman's family, is Corey Bowman in any way qualified to be anybody's elected official, let alone to be the city of Cincinnati, to be the mayor of Cincinnati. Y'all have to be kidding me. That man is barely qualified to probably open the door and walk into the studio with Lincoln Ware, from what I heard. Let alone is he qualified. And I know he's got a whole bunch of stuff. He's run a business. That's great. But I mean, to say that I was disappointed doesn't it doesn't properly define how disappointed I was when I heard the way he was answering some of those questions. And I thought that Lincoln Ware was being nice to him. I would have been way more aggressive and got straight to the point on, why should I trust you? You haven't even voted for mayor before. Why should I trust you? Like, how do I even get past that? Now, all of a sudden, no, what it is you're an opportunist. You see your brothers in the White House. You're like, oh, let me show the Republican Party I can do something too. That's what it's all about. I don't trust that man at all. And it's a travesty that he's even running. It's like Avtab running against nobody. It's like there's nobody running against Avtab. Like, for people like, well, at least somebody would challenge him. He's no challenge to Avtab in any way. In any way, that's like a falcon against a worm. It ain't even fair. So
now,
please,
I've never heard that analogy before.
It's terrible.
Where'd you come up with that?
I'm not going to sit around and act like he is somehow good enough to sit in a seat and he's a real thing. Please, we're not even having. He is so not up to the point that he can't even challenge Avtab in the debates because he don't know nothing. Talking about, I'm going to learn when I get on the job. What? Man, you don't get out of here. Waste of time. Anybody who votes for him, is, I mean, it's an exercise in your democracy. You're worth it, but I don't see it. I just don't see it at all. I'm calling it like it is. But you
Yeah,
know, these little conspiracy theories about Bone. He has no. He should be nobody's elected official at all.
and he's not going to be, Nathan. I mean, look, the fact of the matter is, there's no substance there. And this is, and I say that with all due respect, to Mr. Bowman. He is a novice. He has nothing in his background or in his track record that should even suggest that he is qualified to, maybe if he had run for city council, right, set his sights maybe a little bit lower, maybe that might have been a possibility for him. The JD Vance juice and trying to get a Republican on council might have been enough to get him on council. I think running for mayor, I think his reach is exceeding his grasp on that, and I think he's going to find that out in a very painful way come November. I said this after the primary, that he might get embarrassed worse than he did in the primary election, where only 9% of the city
Hey,
turned
take
out
it from
turned out to
me.
vote.
Republicans on Cincinnati City Council are an extinct species, as I am evidence of. So that's that.
We just had one, like, what was it, 2 years ago? She was on
Yeah,
council.
and she lost. She had a very big name. What was her? Keating.
Keating.
Forget her.
Yeah.
What?
Liz Keating. Liz Keating.
Yeah, and who, by the way, I spoke to her a couple times. She's very personable, attractive, and,
Yeah,
and pretty.
she was
She's
solid.
pretty moderate. She still couldn't win.
Yeah,
And with that name,
it's hard
Keating.
to beat that. It's hard to go up against that Democratic slate for Cincinnati City Council.
It is.
It's
Yeah.
in the current environment, that Democratic slate is pretty much pencil it in. I mean, whether you agree with that or not, that's what it is. And Bowman's not gonna do anything. He hasn't shown anything. Now, I do agree. He might be able to cobble together a few votes if he was the kind of competent candidate who could try to
Right.
take advantage, of this situation if he had that type of political mentality and work, kind of infrastructure there. But we had a young man who worked on Corey Bowman's campaign, a young Gen Zer who wrote a guest column in recently, and he just talked about his disappointment in terms of how Corey Bowman was running his campaign. It was like he was just glad to get the pub, and that seems to be what his campaign is mostly about, which I've said all along. He's just trying to position himself. The goal of this election for him is not to win. It's to get his name out there, to test the waters and see where he can go. And
Right.
so I think to expect him to actually challenge AvTab or for this election to be even close, Nathan, I might eat my shoe on this podcast if Corey Bowman finds some way to somehow upset AvTab
We will
Pureball.
remember that.
Break
In
out
case
the
we will remember that.
Yeah, please do. Break out the hot sauce, the salt and pepper, whatever you got, man. I will pull out the laces and everything and take
Oh
a
yeah, for
take a nice
sure.
big bite out of it.
Oh yeah,
You know
for sure.
what's interesting is when I first ran for city council, in fact, and when I was a prosecutor before that, you guys remember every Hamilton County office, every one was held by a Republican. The city was always pretty Democrat, but you could get a couple Republicans elected too, like Mayor Charlie Winburn. Now, not only is the city 100% Democrat, but Hamilton County now is almost exclusively Democrat. In fact, do we even have, I think the only county elected official left that's a Republican, I think, is the engineer. Is it the engineer? Or I forget, but basically they're all Democrats now.
And thank God for that. Thank God for that. Because if not, we have a whole bunch of Republicans running around talking about transgenders and running around trying to implement Donald Trump's goofy, crazy, delusional worldview. I'm glad we got Democrats in these positions because I don't want to hear all that MAGA nonsense.
Well, Nathan, I'm glad your wishes come true.
Thank you. Thank God. I got some more wishes I wish that God would work on.
I don't know if we want to hear them.
Since you want to go there, since you want to green light it, let's green light all
Hey,
of
listen,
them.
share your dreams and your visions, please. We got the time.
I have a dream. Oh my gosh. Well, here's what I'll say about the high part thing. I wish him the best. It seems like, I don't know. It seems a little, I'm just gonna call it out. People have said it already. it seems a little bit sensitive and elitist. Like in other neighborhoods, I've heard people worried about, things as serious as, gentrification or, the lack of black businesses. Over in Hyde Park, and again, I don't want to make it too low, but I'm gonna rank it. It's not that important in the grand scheme of things to me, but it seems like one of the big bones of contention is the height of this hotel. And I'm like, what? That's y'all biggest issue? We're in the black neighborhoods. We worried about real issues. Y'all worried about the height of a hotel. A hotel. And it's like, I guess.
Yeah, it's first world problems. And
First
Nathan,
world
I mean,
problems,
as
right?
to use the you, but yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. I mean, it's I mean, look, we all know what Hyde Park is in relation to, again, as I mentioned, the affluence and in that community compared to other neighborhoods and what they're able to do. Even when city council, which usually tends to listen to neighborhoods like Hyde Park over other neighborhoods, but even when council doesn't listen to them, they have the wherewithal to challenge that. As I said, some neighborhoods don't have that luxury because the residents don't have the same resource, the access to connections per se that folks who live in Hyde Park might. So you're absolutely right. I mean, they are coming at it from a position of privilege where they're concerned about the Hyde Park Square skyline being disrupted, and the aesthetics of the square being disrupted by this development. That is very much different than having a sports stadium dropped and built in the middle of your neighborhood, or very much different in terms of having entire populations being moved out so that you can bring in young affluent professionals into the neighborhood and place them in there. So it's definitely a different set of circumstances that we're talking about here in terms of developers encroaching on a neighborhood.
Well,
And
I've
you're
got a
right.
confession. I have a confession, and I know this is only going to be ammunition for you guys who always like to paint me as part of the ruling class or something. But I'll say it anyway. When we moved to Cincinnati, and I won't say how you guys weren't even born, but 1970, whatever. I did live in the Hyde Park area for 30 years. So okay, you, go ahead, come at me. Go ahead.
What's
I
that
mean, that's
like,
no.
Phil?
I mean, that's no
That's what we
surprise. I
expect.
mean,
We expect that.
you move from Hyde Park
I'm
to
just giving you
Indianville. I
ammunition.
mean,
I know
what?
that,
What
but
do
I
you?
just thought it would get you guys juiced up.
Tell us something we didn't know.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean,
absolutely. You
that's
got hell to pay in the near future. Get ready.
No doubt.
I didn't put this on the list. But ICE arrests have been happening in Cincinnati. As a matter of fact, there was an arrest at the Kroger store. As a matter of fact, somebody wrote a letter to the editor about it saying that, there was just calling out Donald Trump's cruelty for his administration. And so, yeah, ICE has come to Cincinnati. And it doesn't seem as if there's been a whole lot of friction, at least not in the being played out on Front Street between the city and administration. I mean, I guess we're still sort of like a sanctuary city, whatever that means these days. Um, what do you think about? And again, I know I'm throwing you a curveball. I didn't prepare you for this, but I could be wrong about this. I think we're probably all going to have an opinion about it. But what do you think about Trump's immigration policies to this point? Are they good or bad for the country?
Well, I think they're terrible. And what always happens is when you give somebody power, they always want to stretch it as much as they can. In the campaign, all they talked about was criminals. We're just going to get rid of the criminals. Well, it's pretty clear that they're going to deport anybody they can. And that includes like the guy at Columbia and the professor at one school or the other. For what? For writing and these people were legally in the country, legally here, and they wrote like an op-ed piece, and so they were claimed to be or attacked as enemy, what disrupt, I don't know, a danger to our country. And this thing, I don't know who they picked up at Kroger, but I'm guessing that it wasn't necessary. Somebody even had a criminal record, and it's a horrible situation. I think the closest analogy is the McCarthy era in the 50s, but it's it's very, and probably the worst thing, we've talked about this, is that they are basically not obeying the courts. There have been the Supreme Court told them to bring back that Garcia guy, what, 4 weeks ago? They're just not going to do it. Another judge told them to stop sending people there. They just keep doing it. That's the scariest thing of all.
Yeah. I kind of feel like, look, I'll say this: if you've got violent criminals who are here illegally, sure, get them out of the country. When police pull them over or whatever, let's do that. But people who are here in this country, I've always advocated that the best way to deal with undocumented people who are in this country is to come up with an immigration policy that allows people to come out of the shadows and work their way towards American citizenship. I've never bought into this notion of, hey, we're going to ferret out and round up all of these people and then deport them and have them come back in the right way. I think that's a pipe dream just in general that only leads to these sporadic cases where ICE finds a family in a Kroger parking lot and then pulls the dad away from his screaming children, which I don't think is any way in which we should be doing this. I think there are ways that you can set up programs that are less costly to the US and in fact might actually generate money by getting undocumented people to come out of the shadows, pay back taxes or whatever it is. There are a myriad of processes that you could go through that people could walk the line and follow to get their citizenship, that might actually be able to ways to generate revenue and put money into the country's coffers instead of spending money on this type of just you know cruel and unusual immigration policy that Trump wants to put in there. But the Republicans don't want to do that. They don't want to like try to come up with any kind of amnesty or pathway to citizenship for whatever reason that they think that, hey, if you broke the law and came into the country illegally, you got to leave and come back through the right way. I just think that's insanity. I think it's never going to happen. You're never going to round up all of those folks. All you're going to do is wind up having these little instances here or there where you're going to catch people, you're going to deport them, but you're never going to get to the millions of people who are already in this country. There are far more effective ways to deal with it that would be less costly and more beneficial to the country. And I got to believe that there are smarter people than me that can know how to figure out and do that. It's just a lack of political will and cruelty to do it.
Well,
And
I'm not sure, Kevin, that they actually aren't going to go after millions. They now, Trump has told ICE that he wants 3,000 deported every day. Now, if you're a guy in ICE and you want to get some credit or move up the ladder, what are you going to do? You're going to go out there and you're going to try to find any illegals you can. You don't care if they're criminals or whatever. So I'm much more concerned that they are actually going to succeed at this and have, as he said, millions of people deported.
well, I understand Trump wants 3,000 a day, but what's he getting? And that's the thing here. The Trump administration is known for bloviating and overhyping what they're actually do. Hell, I can say all day, I can say I want to collect $3,001 bills every day. That don't mean I'm gonna go out and get 3,000 people to give me $1 every day. I want to see what he's getting. What are the numbers looking like? I am highly skeptical that he is ever going to approach or come close to the numbers that he says that he wants to in terms of deporting undocumented workers. I could be wrong. I may be wrong. He could ultimately prove me wrong, but count me skeptical.
Now, I want to answer the question, what do I think about Trump's immigration policies at this point? As someone who voted for Trump, I like it. And is it good or bad for this country? I believe that it's too soon to tell. But what we do know is what he said he was going to do, he did. He has deported immigrants to where there's been a record low of illegal immigrants crossing into our borders, which that's what people voted for him for. And if you want to know if it's good or bad for the country, we need to start zeroing in communities like Chicago, who was overturned with immigrants, and in Washington, all these places that are overturned with immigrants. So I want to take it just a little bit further when we talk about immigrations and how much it was costing the government to pay for, housing the immigrants and getting them acclimated into the United States if they could qualify for citizenship processing in the first place. It would cost them millions and millions of dollars. So by deporting them, we save money. And then let's talk about how we're going to move from cutting Medicaid and Medicare and all that kind of stuff, the SNAP programs, to get people. So I know what you're saying about the immigrants. We could have found them jobs. And with the immigration, people leaving, they were going to, it's going to affect the working class. But if what they do is going to work by cutting SNAP and making you have to work to get SNAP and forcing the people who are working eligible, who are willing body, I'm talking able-minded and able-bodied people who are juicing the system. If they're juicing the system, they should be able to have to go to work. They should have to work to receive benefits.
Are you saying migrants aren't working? That's the reason they come to this country, is to get jobs.
So, but they deported the migrants, and they want to get America first people working again. I'm talking about these people who are juicing the system. Now, I'm not talking about people who really need it.
Are you talking migrants? I'm talking about welfare chiefs. Who are you talking about? Migrants?
This is twofold. Do I think it's good or bad for the country by them immigrant? How I said we don't know yet. By them deporting the immigrants, if the plan goes into effect, that the American people who are abusing the SNAP system go to work.
That's a totally different issue. Totally different.
That's your opinion. In my opinion, they completely work correlating together. If you get rid of the
migrant issues, what do migrants who come to the country to get jobs have to do with the issue, which I'm happy to discuss about Medicaid?
I'm saying, let me explain. Let me tell him what I'm saying. If the immigrants that we're deporting, if they're coming here to look for jobs, we should be able to give the people who work in America the jobs first. That's all I'm saying.
The people in America don't want to pick lettuce.
So if they don't want to pick lettuce, so they're going to stay at home and receive SNAP benefits, correct? Take them off the SNAP benefits and make them have to work. You're not opening your mind to see a bigger picture. If they take them off the SNAP benefits, the people who won't want to pick lettuce and they're staying at home and they're receiving SNAP benefits, we take them off the SNAP benefits. We put them on to working in order to get those same benefits that creates jobs right here for Americans right here in America. That makes sense. That's what they're going to do with the manufacturing. That's what makes sense.
You know what Tarris's problem is? His problem is the same problem that the Republicans have done a great job of sort of painting this picture of this boogeyman who is not working and getting SNAP benefits and Medicaid benefits. And they want you to believe that number is just astronomical. When in fact, when you look at it, even when you talk about the percentage of undocumented people who might receive Medicaid benefits, it's less than 1% of all of the funds that are spent on Medicaid. And what they don't tell you is that a lot of that is the fact that hospitals have to treat people regardless of your immigration status when you come in there, if it's an emergency situation. So this mythical story, like, people need to do their homework instead of listening to the talking points of these politicians. Actually go online. Google is a wonderful thing. You can find a whole bunch of stuff on the internet if you really want to search for it and go to reputable sources, instead of just believing what some politician somewhere is going to tell you in a soundbite about who's doing what. And that's where you find out that and that's not to say, look, that there aren't people who are beating the system, right? We all know it. Most of the reason why people will buy it is because we all know somebody in our family or a friend who is shiftless and it is working the system right. And we look at that person and we think like, oh, because we know somebody, there are millions of, tens of millions of other people who are doing the same thing. That's why people will buy into that. But the reality of the fact of the matter is that most people who receive those benefits need those benefits. They're relying on those benefits. And I said this in the last podcast. We spend so much time making laws and making rules and regulations to deal with a very small percentage of the population that does not follow the rules. The majority of people follow the rules and need the programs that are out there. It's a very small percentage, which unfortunately Republicans would always have you believe is way larger than it is, right? And also has a certain skin color type and certain type of thing like that that they want to assign to that to get people to buy into that. And that's what you're hearing terrorists espousing right there. Look, the fact of the matter is that if Americans were doing those jobs, you wouldn't need to pipe in migrant populations to come in and do those jobs. Americans don't want to pick lettuce. They ain't gonna pick lettuce, right? They're not. And I tell you right now, black people ain't going back in the fields to pick cotton. It ain't happening.
Yeah, my answer would be, to immigration policy, Trump's immigration policy would be to me, as I watch and read, it's quite it's quite it's quite obvious to me that it's a stain on the soul of this country right now. There's no success stories in this whatsoever, except for one, and that is Donald Trump successfully creating his own reality show using ICE, using the federal government. He's created his own reality show for people like terrorists, for MAGA. And so every single night, you get to see black and brown people that they tell you are somehow illegal, and you get to see them shipped away to El Salvador or somewhere else. And Donald Trump has been very successful in creating this reality show, and a lot of people really really like it. To me, it's sickening. And check this out right here. And the thing about it is that the problem that Donald Trump said was never really the problem. The problem was never that issue. We never really had an illegal immigration problem. That was never the problem.
If that was the case,
But
Kamala Harris would have won the election. That's why she lost. That was the number one reason. If you look at, like Kevin said, Google's the thing. If you Google what was the number one reason cause why Donald Trump beat Kamala Harris, number one would be immigration, and number two would probably be the economy. So you guys, a lot of people who voted for them lied. And Kevin, I just want to address this. What Kevin said.
Yeah, a lot of people lied, though, Terrace.
They listened to politicians.
The people who said that, Terrace, they lied. Many people voted for Donald Trump because they couldn't vote for a black woman, but they just don't want to say that. Some people will keep it real, but they say other words like it was the economy or immigration. Now, I don't doubt that those weren't issues for the Democrats, but like I said, this is a soul on the state of America. The problem never was as big as the Republicans made it out to be. They only said that because Biden was in office. It never was that big of a deal. That this whole thing about migrant crime was always a lie that Trump made up. The real issue is that for decades, Republicans and Democrats have never came together to pass comprehensive legislation on how to deal with it. The reason why they haven't done that, Terrence, the reason why the Republicans didn't go for that deal is because they wanted to run on it. They don't want to solve the problem. They want to use it as a political tool against the Democrats when it benefits them.
I agree with
you. The moment Donald Trump got in office, you didn't hear a word about what was happening at the border whatsoever. And, a lot of things happened at the end of Biden's term that were, I guess, positive in terms of border crossings going down that get falsely reported as a success for Donald Trump. I mean, the border crossings were already down. So that was never the issue. I'm more concerned about white supremacists. I'm more concerned about homegrown terrorists. That's a far bigger issue. If we really want to talk about who's the bigger threat, that's the real threat. Not somebody coming over here that wants to get a job. They miss a court date, and then they run from ICE for the next 10, 15 years, but they never commit a crime. They're paying taxes for programs that they can't even benefit from because they're here so-called illegally, but they're just working and living and praying and buying chewing gum and gas and spending money at small businesses. Those people are not a threat. So, for instance, check this out. Here's what's been reported here a lot. Per a shift in policy, ICE agents are now showing up at immigration court hearings and arresting people. Now, think about that.
They're arresting the people who are actually obeying the law by showing up.
They're arresting the people who are actually obeying the law. These are the good people. They're not running. They're actually showing up at court dates. Could you imagine the betrayal? You show up at a court date trying to be, you aspire to be an American. This is what you want. This is why you're going through the system, and ICE agents arrest you and deport you, And they put it on the news, on Fox News, like this is some kind of success story. Man, this is sickening. This is sickening. What's
But you
happening?
know, but you know what, Nathan, this is just is par for the course with Trump's approach. Look, I think most of us would agree that immigration is an issue that you want to handle that you can handle effectively with a scalpel. Trump is handling it with a hammer, and this is a perfect example of that. And I think that there is a certain percentage of the population that did vote for him, that whether it's racism or whatever else you want to call
Oh,
it,
they love the TV
xenophobia,
show.
or whatever it is, that they want him to deal with this as a hammer. They're okay with this. They don't delineate the good immigrants from the bad immigrants. They just see immigrants and it's get them out of
Yeah,
here. And so there are a
that's
lot of
called the
people who
race card.
don't. Yeah, a lot of people don't have a problem with this. In fact, they will applaud it. But you hit the nail on the head that this is what happens when the two sides can't come together and have kicked the can down the road. Democrats and Republicans who have kicked this can down the road for years without solving the immigration problem in this country. This is what you're left with.
That's not totally
And
fair, though, Kevin. That's not totally fair because Democrats and Republicans had an immigration bill that favored a lot of what the Republicans wanted, and they had it. And Trump told the Republicans not to vote for it so he could run on it. And
But
that's a part of the history
I'm
too.
even gonna go back before that, Nathan. I'm not gonna dispute you on that. That's absolutely 100% correct. And I said you're right that you know Republicans have wanted to run on it as a wedge issue in elections, particularly in this election. Donald Trump wanted to use it for his own personal gains. But I'm even saying, like, way before that, like, this isn't anything new. This conversation on immigration and the border is not something that just popped up in the 2024 election
Oh,
cycle, right?
absolutely.
This is a decades old conversation that we've been trying to fix and settle as a country. And so I think every presidential administration that has come before this that's failed to address it is responsible. And so I think that when you're unable to come together with a collaborative thing, you're left to these types of devices when you get a guy like Trump who doesn't care. And then you're gonna have half the country, 45 to 50% of the country that ain't gonna
Yeah.
apologize for it.
I want to introduce a different perspective too, because I'm probably the only panel member who has ever been arrested. I don't know you guys like that, but I know that I missed a court date one day, and they called me down to the courthouse.
I thought you guys got hold of my record.
They called me down. They called me down to the Kenton County Courthouse. Say, "Oh yeah, we got something for you. We need you to come down here." And they arrested me on the spot because I missed a court date. I feel no sympathy for any of these people who are going through this process. I went to court before, and judges have done me dirt. Had sheriffs go through my pockets. I'm an American, and I've seen my friends who.
So don't you want? Wait. So because bad things happen to you, Tarris, you want those bad things to happen to somebody else?
I'm not
Like if
saying
somebody
that.
violate my rights, that don't mean I'm okay because somebody else's rights gets violated. If anything, I'm gonna feel the opposite. Like, no, don't violate their rights because I know how that feels.
When the black community was going through this in the 90s and the 2000s, the black community was going through all that. Their rights were violated, and it's no different. In my opinion, it's no different. This is what we are, who we are.
You're right. They're both wrong, Tarris.
They're both wrong.
They're both wrong.
So where was the outrage? Where's the fake outrage? It's like, it's just because it's Donald Trump. If this was Joe Biden and them doing this, y'all be like, oh, this is great. This is great. This is what I call a fake or a false outrage. False outrage.
But Joe Biden and those guys wouldn't do it. They wouldn't take this approach. And
I'm not saying I was mistreated, so others should be too. I'm saying this is what we call a Democratic Party false outrage. You do it all the time with
false outrage,
just like the El Salvador, like the El Salvador guy who's been, like the people going to El Salvador, and y'all saying that the Supreme Court said that we should send him back. It's up to the El Salvador government to send him back.
That's BS. That's BS.
The Supreme Court in the United States of America has no jurisdiction over in El Salvador, and you guys keep spitting this rhetoric out.
You're wrong about that. You're wrong about
these
that,
viewers. And I sit here and I'm sitting here and I'm listening and I offer an alternative perspective, and y'all are like, no, that's wrong. That's wrong. How is Donald Trump supposed to make the El Salvadorian president or the person?
I'll tell you exactly. I'll tell you exactly how. They're paying El Salvador millions of dollars. everybody and anybody knows that all he has to do is pick up the phone and say, send the guy back or we're not going to pay you anymore.
And what's the dude gonna say? What if he doesn't want to send them back? And Donald Trump doesn't want to send him back.
First
of all, Terrence, first of all, it's El Salvador and it's the United States. They're not on the same level. That's like if Mike Tyson rolled up to you right now and is like, hey, give up that soda you got right there. I'm gonna bust you in the mouth. I bet for sure you gonna give up that soda because you wanna preserve that beautiful smile you got, brother. You ain't gonna be chomping on chiclets. And that's basically what it is. Look, America.
I think you're going a little too far with the beautiful smile, but continue.
Look, America is the 800-pound gorilla, maybe outside of China. The weight that the president carries, it ain't like you or me rolling up to the president of El Salvador saying, "Could you please send them back?" No, if Donald Trump said send them back, he would send them back. And you and everybody else on your side need to stop pretending like that ain't the way that it works. It's an insult to our intelligence and even your own, Tarris.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that if Donald Trump called and said that he wants him to release, that he wouldn't be released.
That's exactly what you just said. You said, what is Donald Trump supposed to do? That's exactly what you just said.
When he does, okay. If I said that, I was saying that in references the Supreme Court. When Phil said the Supreme Court, Donald Trump's not even listening to the Supreme Court when the Supreme Court's saying to send these people back from El Salvador. Why would he call and tell El Salvador to send them back because the Supreme Court wants him to when he doesn't want to? Phil's absolutely correct. He's like, he don't care what the Supreme Court says.
And that's the problem. And that's the problem right there. He doesn't care about what the law is, Tarris. That's the exact. Why does the Supreme Court matter? Because the Supreme Court is the purveyors of the law, so the law of the country.
If they're the purveyors of the law of the country, have them make the phone call and get that gang member with the tattoos on his fingers back. Then, if they're that powerful, make that call and have him come back. Have him have the call if he's that powerful.
Foolish. Terrence, you said a lot of foolish things on this podcast, but brother, that's borderlining on one of your greatest hits.
Yeah, you put together your own Mount Rushmore today, all on one show. Yeah, you really out there. But like I said, gang member or not, the Supreme Court says bring them back. Rule of law, that's what the executive should do. But unfortunately, we've got a malignant narcissist who's probably dealing with some early dementia, paranoia, who has been a criminal his whole life. He's been a con man criminal his whole life. So, of course, he's going to do this. But that's why the rest of us didn't vote for this con man criminal, because we were afraid that some of the things we're seeing right now would actually happen. That's why. I think it's terrible. But we can agree. Look at Tarris. He's like, I'm fed up with this guy.
No,
I'm fed up with this bull, with this Democrat bull. He been drinking the Democrat Kool-Aid. I can see it on your face. I can see it on your face.
But by the way, there's a legal principle which says that if you create a situation which kind of forces you to act illegally or somebody else to, you're still responsible. In other words, you can't create a scenario that makes it impossible for you to violate the law. And this whole thing about they're flying the migrants there, and they were, we can't, it's out of our jurisdiction. They created the jurisdictional issue, and legally they are required to correct it and bring those people back.
And they already admitted. The Trump DOJ admitted in court, that's what really got this ball really rolling, right? Is that the Trump administration, their lawyer admitted in court that it was a mistake for him to have even been taken by the United States.
And then they fired the lawyer.
And then they fired the lawyer for speaking the truth. I mean, you talk about corruption on corruption. So what we're seeing right here, to go back and circle back to the question, I think is corrosive to our country on every level, what we're seeing. And I think that what hasn't been talked about is the extent to which ICE has become Donald Trump's own personal private police. Like, I see people that allegedly are at ICE with masks on, walking up to people, apprehending people, no badge. It's like the secret police. None of this is good. Legitimizing that is not good for anybody in this country. And I don't care what your political party is. It is a bad precedent that future generations may have to deal with in a very serious way.
They
Like,
have
what are we
adopted.
creating in the future for our children? What kind of world, what kind of country are we creating for them? Where
Well,
ICE now, you got to be afraid of ICE. ICE is going into schools, going into grocery stores. That ain't good for none of us. And it's all for a
not true.
make-believe problem.
Not true. Here's what I would say if you're on that side, and again, this is where you have to understand sort of the separation of kind of where we are in the country. And the question that you asked, Nathan, is a pertinent question. Is where are we going and what kind of country are we trying to build? And what you got to recognize is that everybody ain't on the same page about what America should look like. And so your view of America and what it should be is very different from the view of the folks on the other side. And
What's the other
so,
side?
Can I
well,
tell you? I'll tell you, but
the
they
other
keep
side,
you'll cut me off.
the other side is get the immigrants out of here. Let's break up this gay stuff. Let's break up this gay transgender stuff. Quit forcing it on our kids. Quit trying to be the thought police and telling me what to think, believe, what I can think and I can say, what's acceptable and what's not. This is what you're up against, and what
Oh, you mean the flat earthers?
Whatever you want to call them, Nathan.
Well, I mean,
This is what
we got to call them what they are. So, like,
okay.
listen, just because you think the earth is flat don't mean I'm going to legitimize that. And I'm not going to give any ground on
it. At this point, it doesn't matter what you want to legitimize. It matters who's in power and what they are trying to legitimize.
Yes.
And what I'm trying to tell you is that you're saying ICE doing what they're doing is not good for any of us. I agree with you. I'm on the side with you that says this ain't good. But there is a percentage of people who feel like ICE ain't coming for them. And they look at ICE as the enforcement arm to take care of all of the types of people that they don't want to live with.
Let me
take one step
further.
all
of that,
Kevin.
Hold on, Terrence, real quick. Okay. I get what you're saying, Kevin, obviously. But what I'm saying is to them people, including terrorists, is that while you're sitting here, the same thing that make you laugh can make you cry. Because while you sitting back right now thinking it's all cool and ICE, that same thing is going to come for your family, your grandkids. It's going to be that same thing that comes and gets you. And I can see that. So what I'm saying is you might think, oh, they're getting out the illegals. No, they're creating a Gestapo. That's what they're creating. That is only beholden to the executive branch. And I don't care about no Democrat or Republican. That's not good for any of us. You're not winning. You ain't winning. You're losing because you're creating something that you don't have control over, that can have control over you. And that's terrible.
And that's the bad part about that side of the argument, Nathan, is they never believe that it's going to come back on that it's going to come back on them, even in the face of the evidence. It's just like a whole lot of people who voted for Donald Trump who have now lost their jobs and gonna lose benefits and a whole lot of other things because they thought that he was on their side, and now they effed around and found out. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and it's going to be the same way. This is the message of when Terrence talks about fake outrage about El Salvador. It's not fake outrage. It's legitimate concern because of what Nathan exactly expressed. That right now you're cool with it because they're going around rounding up immigrants and that sort of thing. But wait until they start rounding up political adversaries and people that Donald Trump don't like, that they start rounding you up because you say things about him that he doesn't agree with, that he shuts your business down or whatever because he feels like what you're doing and what you're saying is anti-American. That's the slippery slope that you're on when you turn a blind eye to this type of stuff. It never stops. It never stops at just one place.
Can I gotta expound on what Kevin said, because he was saying it was like the agenda for the Republican Party. You're right. Get rid of the immigrants, and then the transgender thing. I don't. That's not my agenda. But I'm just paraphrasing where the Republican Party voice. Then, like I was saying before I was interrupted and stopped to complete my point, the SNAP benefits are going to create the SNAP. After immigrants gone, they're going to take the SNAP benefits and they're going to create another working class. They're going to create another working class. And after they create the other working class, they're going to try to promote more white babies being born. This is all about the birth rate right here, guys. And I've been saying this, and it's all about white birth rate. The declining, it's at a 2.9, unsurmountable. Scientifically, it's impossible for them to come to come back from it. But they're still going to try to put any kind of in play that they possibly can to get more white babies. With the Elon Musk stuff, bringing the South Africans over here to try to populate over here and giving them $1 million plans, and Trump saying that they were going through some kind of oppression. That's for more white babies. All this stuff of getting the white people back to work, getting them off food stamps, getting them away from the PlayStations and getting them back to work, getting them back in church, getting them thinking that heterosexual is the way to go and create more white babies. But it will backfire, like Kevin said. It's not going to work. Just like they thought that they were going to get crack cocaine, they're going to get crack cocaine and put it in the black community, and then it's started to affect the white community even more with the meth and how it's taken over. And then they're like, oh no, we're not going to lock white people up because we need to create more white babies. We're going to have programs for them to get them off the drugs and get them methadone and get them all these things. But the black community, they were locking us up. This is all, in my opinion, to go back to is the immigration good or bad? We're going to see, because the Republican Party and the white supremacy who subscribe
How is
to
any of this good for black people then, Tarris?
Let me finish, please. The Republican Party, who are the white supremacy, who are putting the Republican Party in these plays, like you guys say, Project 2025 and all this kind of stuff. It's not good. They're going to have to play their hand, and when it backfires in their face again, like you guys say it's going to, but I'm just saying we should not be naive to the play that they're playing. They're saying that if we have
But we know, Tarris, that's why I'm saying that I think that this immigration, what I see so far, is evil. He's putting on a show for MAGA, and he's eroding the separation of powers. And every single day I turn on the newspaper, I'm seeing pain and children being 2-year-olds being zip tied, 6-year-olds being zip tied in immigration court. This is the reason why the Democrats didn't do this. And I've said it before. They are not the same, right? They might get their money from some of the same wells. Democrats and Republicans are not the same. Republicans right now love what they see. Democrats are like, we could have did this in a bit more compassionate and more organized and efficient way. But Republicans like the show. They love to see black and brown bodies with zip ties, and they're being put in police cars and being shipped on military planes to go out Salvador. Fox News and the Fox News crowd is getting a heck of a show. Everybody else, we're getting a real bad time. We're getting a real bad time. A lot of people are saying.
Can I say a word about the whole Medicaid issue? Because I do believe it's totally different from the migrant issue. They have studied, first of all, one of the falsehoods that is being spread by Trump and those who support him is that the cuts they're making to Medicaid, which are going to throw 10 million people off of healthcare, they're saying, oh, it's waste. By us requiring able-bodied people to work, that we're going to save all this money. Well, the studies that have been done on the population that gets Medicaid in no way bears that out. What it shows is, by and large, those people who are not working because they're either single mothers or they have some disability or something, there's very scant evidence that there's all these people cheating on Medicaid. And one of the misleading theories that's being thrown out is they're saying, oh, well, Medicaid was always supposed to be a temporary thing for the poorest people. It wasn't meant to be a permanent thing. Well, that's not true, because what Obamacare did, it is true, it used to be just for low-income people. But essentially what Obama did with Obamacare was take Medicaid and expand it to provide health care for middle class and people, especially people who are not employed by a company, independent contractors, things like that, because those people couldn't get health insurance. So all this stuff about, oh, we're going to put able-bodied people to work, it's a lot of baloney. There is very little evidence that is occurring.
You are right, man. But, it really plays. Republicans get a lot of mileage out of saying that over and over again. Able-bodied people. I'm thinking, have you ever do you know anybody on Medicaid or Medicare?
Yes.
Have you gone through the system? That's already the case. They got all kind of stop gaps and things you got to prove, and it's all kind of hurdles and red tape that's already involved with it. But for people who really don't know, it sells well. They fall, oh, somebody's getting something they didn't work for. We get so caught up in what other people are getting that we end up shooting
Nathan,
ourselves in the foot over and over again.
it's easy to pull that over because I always say healthcare is one of the most complicated areas for people to understand, even personally. Like, even when you are on your job trying to go through and determine your health benefits and read all of that stuff, and then it's complicated stuff. And most people, if you sat down and you quizzed them on exactly what Medicaid was and how does it work and who gets it, they couldn't answer a single one of those questions, with any degree of specificity, right? And so when you get into these complex political conversations around this, politicians that most people don't know. They don't understand how it works. So they can rip these one-liners off, and you have no choice but to swallow it because most people are not going to go out and do the research, and most people don't understand it anyway. And so they'll buy that line that, oh, they're a bunch of able-bodied people who should be working who are getting Medicaid benefits, right? It and people will buy it hook, line, and sinker. And that's why I said, like, Google is a wonderful thing if you want to take the time, you know, to go do your own research and actually read and educate yourself and inform yourself rather than just listening to what Donald Trump or any other politician wants to tell you about something. It'll take some time, and you may even have to get somebody who's knowledgeable to sit down and explain some things to you. But that's better than just buying a whole line of crap from people who don't know what they're talking about
Right. Yeah. I
and who
mean, I hear.
have political agendas.
Yeah, they waste. Please, that's not where the problem is. That is not what the problem is. I'm not worried about these recipients, these Medicare, welfare. I'm not worried about that. And actually, if you did some really, I think if you went back and looked at it, most of those people aren't really getting enough, actually, because if you want the system to help people, they got to have more. That's just me. But I understand the cruel politics of it all. So let's move on. Let's talk about Elon Musk. Elon Musk, and we haven't talked about him in maybe a couple of months, but he has now stepped away from Doge. Apparently, he was some kind of government special assistant, and that designation comes with like an expiration date. I think it's like 3 months. That time has come. He's dumped. He's walked away. He's actually came out and kind of criticized the Trump administration for his so-called big, beautiful bill, which is anything other than that. It is big, but there's nothing beautiful about it unless you're super, super wealthy.
Can I just throw out one thing real quick?
Sure.
Because I heard somebody last night, or I think it was Colbert, or somebody like that. He said, you know how people are always saying that, oh, I'm quitting because I want more time with my family. Well, he was saying Musk is quitting because he needs more family with his time.
More family with his time, yes.
He
is trying to repopulate the world.
If we can rewind this show back 5-6 months ago when Elon Musk first came in there, I know y'all say some of the most ridiculous things, because now we're to the point now to the ridiculous things that I say come into fruition. I had a hat when I saw this subject on. I was going to put on this hat because remember back in the day I said Elon Musk is playing politics. He's going to leave in 90 days after. Will you guys admit? I said Elon Musk is playing politics right now. He's from the beginning when we first started. I said he's going to leave. He's not going to. I said he's going to step down because things don't move as fast as what he wants to. So this is all a play in the Dana White playbook. Like I said, I know you think y'all say I'm crazy, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to find the clip from when I said
you said all that, but we all knew that. We all knew that though.
But I'm crazy when I say it. That whole spiel I just went through a minute ago about all this stuff and immigration, all leads down to white supremacy and how the white birth rate, I'm crazy. But here soon, just like with this Elon Musk stuff that I was exactly right about, I'm exactly right about that as well. Y'all say I'm crazy, but I'm not.
Okay, well, tell me this then. Do you think that Elon Musk has had a good or bad impact with Doge and working with the Trump administration?
We're not going to know yet. My personal experiences, we don't know. My brother, who we talked about on this show, my brother finally got fired. He finally got fired after this Elon Musk thing. So now, who knows? It is terrible because the people, the people he was supporting in the army and the troops, instead of having instant tech support. If their app goes down, they now go into a queue that 60 people were doing a job that 2 people now have to do. So I do believe that part is terrible. But we're going to see. We don't know. We're asking questions on there, and we're having divergent viewpoints. Every time I put my divergent viewpoint comes out there, y'all like, oh, he's crazy. What is he talking about? And then here we are. The audience or what? Same chat. And then 5 months later, where we at? November, December, 6 months later, exactly what I said. Elon Musk is going to step down. Elon Musk is going to walk away. Elon Musk is not going to. This is a short-term thing. It's exactly what's happened. And do we know what he did? We won't know the effect of Doge and for a while. He did cut, but I mean, I think he did. I don't think that it was a fish. I don't think what they're doing is the right way to go about it. I think they're going about when they cut all that, and now they're going to try to implement these strategies in the big, beautiful bill to cut Medicaid and to force people into doing these things. I do believe that it's going to backfire in their face, just like the crack cocaine, just like everything they else do, white supremacy does, that doesn't align up with the will of the Most High. It's going to backfire in their face.
I hear what you're saying, but so far, white supremacy is pretty successful. Let's be real here. It's been pretty successful and pervasive to this day. But, I hear you, Tarris. You're all over the place a little bit, bro. Just a little bit. I'm going to give you just a little bit credit, but we all knew that because his designation was going to leave. I do remember you saying that, though, so I'm not sure what credit you can take from that. But what I'm asking is the impact. I mean, for me, the answer is clear that Elon has been terrible. I mean, he went there to cut government spending, and by all accounts, by this same time a year ago, they spent more money in the federal government. I mean, you talk about clown show. And the only reason why I don't stop it by calling it comedic and a clown show is because Elon Musk and Doge had a nefarious purpose that we just don't know what. We don't know what they were doing yet. We don't know what they're going to do with the data. We don't know what the long-term effects could be to internal federal computer systems. We don't know what the wealthiest man in the world was trying to do. But I do know one thing. It was not about helping humanity. It was not about helping people. I can tell you that. I can tell you that because look at the callousness in which they fired all these people. I mean, I just read an article this morning talking about the chaos. You got a 19-year-old named Big Balls running around firing 40 and 50-year-old people that have been working their jobs for 20 years, 30 years. And this fool is firing you via email. Oops, my bad. Then you get another email saying you're rehired. Then you get another email saying you're fired. I mean, where is the humanity and dignity for these federal workers? So this man what he has done has been evil to me, straight up.
He broke up USAID. I think that, like what Kevin will say, depending on what side of the aisle you're on, you could say
what
the people on the Republican side of the aisle would say single-handedly taking USAID was single-handedly taking away some of the money laundering, some of the money laundering, Ponzi scheme things that were going on within the Democratic Party. These are talking points that go on in the Republican Party.
Nathan, let me get in here. Let me get in here real quick.
I'll let you get in, Kevin. I just want to say, I want to validate Tarris real quick. I hear what you're saying. You're not saying you agree with. You're saying this is what's being said.
This is what's being said.
To my knowledge, you're right about that. I do hear those kind of conversations, but it's completely crazy.
And that's the only reason I bring those up. That's the reason I bring them up, because you guys talked about certain things certain times. I just want to say, okay, these are not talking points of everybody. You guys are talking.
Here's what's insane about that. Here's what's insane about that. Is that Republicans want to celebrate getting rid of USID because it gets rid of some of the corruption and the quote Ponzi scheme-ish type stuff that the Democrats were doing. But they're totally okay with Trump's Qatar plane. They're totally okay with the Ponzi schemes that Trump is setting up with his crypto coin. Oh, that's not corruption of any kind. So that what they want to do is they want to eliminate, quote unquote, how the Democrats is getting money while setting up ways for them to get their money. So Democratic corruption is bad, but Donald Trump and Republican corruption is good. This is the type of stuff that Americans ought to be fed up with, and why the Republicans ought not to have any kind of credibility. You can't talk to me at all about corruption if you are a Republican and you're seeing all of the things that Donald Trump is doing. You can't talk to me about Hunter Biden when I see what the Trump dynasty is doing with the White House and the presidency. It's hypocrisy. You have nothing, you have no moral ground to stand on as a Republican to say anything about corrupt Joe Biden or whatever it is that you want to say when you got the corruptor in chief running roughshod over the emoluments clause and everything else in this country. So it's like it again, it's an insult, not just to it. I always say I used to have a family member who used to tell the worst lies, right? And it really used to make me mad because he thought I was dumb enough to believe the lie. I mean, the lies were just so bad. And it was just like, it was an insult to me. And this is what Donald Trump and his supporters do to the rest of y'all Republicans. They tell y'all such bad lies that you ought to be insulted by the fact that they think you're that stupid that you would buy it, but you do. Y'all swallow it. Y'all take it whole because you have such a hatred of Democrats and liberals that you're willing to absorb any crap this man says if you feel like it's sticking it to the Democrats and the libs in some way, shape, or form. And it's sad.
Yeah, MAGA doesn't really care. MAGA, what I find out, Kevin and Tarris, I'm saying this in front of you, perhaps to provoke a conversation on some levels, but in my opinion, MAGA doesn't really care about America. When you really listen to them, they don't really like this country. And it's like, I would say the same thing to some of them. They say to so-called illegals that come here and complain. Why are you here then? They want to change this country so fundamentally that they wouldn't even want to live in this country, but. I get it. But let me talk about USAID. I'm no expert
Can I
on
say
it.
something real quick on that subject? Just real quick?
Absolutely. I'll jump in afterward if necessary. You might make the same point I'm about to make. Go right ahead.
The word that comes to mind, I hear a lot of, I've heard people say things like, well, I don't like Trump, but I like his policies. Or I've heard a lot of people say, well, I didn't vote for Harris because they're both this or both that. In fact, the pastor at our church has a podcast, and he said that I didn't vote for either. And what I describe that as is a false equivalence. There are too many false equivalences out there. Biden did some bad things, but with all due respect, it doesn't compare with what's going on now. It doesn't compare with sending your son to a country sending your son to a country, 3 countries, before you make an official visit, and he announces a huge resort in those countries, and the 3rd country, Qatar, which by the way also gave him a $200 million jet that he keeps. He keeps it. It doesn't go to the government after he leaves. But not only that, Qatar, I believe it's United Arab Emirates. They put about $2.5 billion into Trump's meme coin or his cryptocurrency company at the same time that he's making an official visit. Now, this doesn't take away from anything Harris has done or Biden or anybody. I don't minimize that, but it is a false equivalence to say that Trump is no different from those others.
Oh, absolutely.
And to add on to
100%.
the
Absolutely.
Qatar
No doubt
plane
about
story.
that.
Well, to add on to the Qatar plane story, Phil, it's since come out that they didn't offer him the plane. He asked for it. Right? Like that, like that's the latest news. Like, it was initially reported like Qatar was going to give it to him as a gift. No, Qatar came out and said, hey, he asked us for the plane.
Yeah, that's typical. I mean, Trump.
Well, I'll say one thing for Trump: he has chutzpah. I can't deny that.
He has no shame. That's different. That's different. Chutzpah is different. He don't have no shame, right? Yeah. He'll exercise his power to the nth degree to get whatever he wants, and if he can get away with it, then he will.
Are you guys
back to
familiar with
USAID though, real quick, Tarris, because for MAGA that claims to be America first, I can't think of a more America first program than the limited info I have about what USAID actually does. I'm sure they do a whole lot more, but they do 2 things that I think every American should be in favor for. So all of us Americans know that this country has done a lot of dirt around the globe on every single continent. And there's no way that the United States could ever pay that back. Through USAID and the various aid programs providing food to, famine, plague nations and areas around the country, this country can do a little good. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the United States doing some good, sprinkling food and rice and beans and whatever else that people who are dead broke living in the streets and their families can need. That's a good thing. The other thing is good is that, you know, what these people found out the 9/11 is that there's a big connection between poverty and being radicalized to terrorism. There's a connection there, right? So through USAD, what we try to do in some of these nations is to make sure that people have something so they don't go to the opposite way and end up with, you know, some bomb attached to their body on a plane in the United States. That's a benefit to everybody in this country, right? We all benefit from this.
I think
And
it's
then the
more
other
of a
thing,
religious thing. I mean, Nathan,
and the
there's
other
a
thing,
lot of very poor countries that
yeah,
people have nothing and they're not terrorists. So I
I'm
think it's
just
more of a
saying.
religious thing than the fact that they're
I'm
poor.
not making that point. I would never do that. I'm just saying there is a connection between poverty and being radicalized. And you can Google it, or I can send you, point you some directions, some books I've read on that. But then secondly is USAID is soft power. It's soft power. It's a way of the United States to leverage its resources with various relationships with people around the world, right? Because everything's about relationships. And this is what we're seeing right now with China. You know, we defunded through Doge, USAID. Now China is saying we're going to step in and exercise soft power. And the ignorance that, you know, is out there about what these government agencies do, even on a basic level, just makes people more ripe to be taken advantage of when election season comes along. Because if you are pro America first, you should be pro USAID. Because
No,
it
and
benefits us on so many different levels.
but you just hit on it, Nathan. Most people in this country had not heard of USAID until this probably came up. When is the last time you were sitting around a barbershop or in casual conversation
Well,
with
they use the
anybody?
term foreign aid. That's people
Right,
don't like
but I'm
foreign
talking
aid.
I'm talking about the organization in and
Yeah,
of
but it's the
itself.
same thing.
Yeah, Phil, you're missing my point here. Is the fact of the matter is whether you say foreign aid, USID, or whatever, the average American has no clue what is going out, what is being done in
Oh,
other
okay,
foreign
that's fair.
countries.
That's fair.
They don't. And
They're just
so
against it,
it's
though, in
like when
general.
Donald Trump stands up at the joint meeting of Congress and he talks about money being spent on transgender mice, right? And he gets a chuckle out of that. First of all, he's an idiot because it wasn't even about there's a difference between transgenic and transgender. He just heard it and thought it was the same thing and thought it would be a funny line that he would throw out there. But people who don't know anything about science or the experimentation or work that they do on mice thinks about, oh, well, we're spending millions of dollars to make mice transgender. Like this is the type of garbage that this guy propaganda misinformation that he spews out because Americans don't know. It's easy to trick somebody and convince them that something bad is going on when they have no clue about it to begin with in the first place. And that is where Donald Trump has been able to excel, is preying upon Americans' general lack of knowledge of these programs and different things like that to make it seem like there's something nefarious going on when really all of this stuff is for the benefit of science, for the benefit of our foreign relations in our country, and he's making a mockery of all of that to our detriment.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I hear MAGA sometimes. Like, I don't know. I like the America First. I like that idea. I like the core of it, but it doesn't stand for. I don't see people. I don't see the Republican Party actually standing for America First, because America First is family first, like in a substantial way. I just don't see it. And you're right. You know, I've said it for years. The only reason why I know is because I studied in college. I'm studying international affairs. I'm learning about all of this. Like, oh, this is how
Let me share something about.
this is how things work. Like, this is how these countries interact. Because you're right, Kevin. You don't know how the United States interacts with Mexico or Canada unless you are classically taught about it and also using history and precedents.
May I say something?
Sure.
Which illustrates the difference between what I would say the traditional Republicans versus the MAGA Republicans. When George W. Bush was in office, and was never a fan of his because that stupid Iraq War and all that stuff, but it's not that well known. But he started a program that distributed the AIDS vaccine around the world. I think especially countries in Africa, but others, and he is considered responsible for saving 20 million lives because of that vaccine. And it was distributed, I'm quite sure, through USAID. Think about that. How many millions of people were saved? And one thing I'll say about George W. Bush, even though, again, I wasn't a fan, he never bragged about it. He never boasted about it, but he did it. And that to me is a very significant difference. First of all, it shows how important that USAID is, that millions of people are likely to die now because they're not going to get vaccines and they're not going to get emergency food supplies. But beyond that, it shows the difference between a George W. Bush that at least had some conscience, some desire to do good compared to what we have now, where there's really no conscience.
Yeah, I'm just saying like that USA Aid or USAID is way more influential in a positive way that helps and protects Americans than what I hear people on Fox News and what I hear Trump and what I hear MAGA talking about. And it's just misinformation. It's like, y'all don't know. That is a blind spot in our critical defense in our strategy internationally that there's just no way to replace it, because if not, like I told you, China, and you just Google it, China's already making inroads. They're like, oh, Trump wants to give you tariffs, he wants to isolate, hey, we'll be friends with you. That is not good for us in the future. That ain't good for us. You're playing right into your opponent's hands, all at the same time saying America first. That is not America first. That's China first. And we and our children are going to have to pay for the various blunders and mistakes that Trump is making right now in our face.
Here's why America first is also just a line of garbage as far as I'm concerned. People who say that, they'll say, oh, we're spending all of that money overseas and we could be spending it here in the United States and we could solve poverty and we could solve homelessness. That's crap. Because the same things that the MAGA first Americans say that they would spend that foreign money on are the same things that they're against spending money on right now. They don't want to spend it. They're against helping poor people, right? You need to right now you're able-bodied, go out and get a job. So they're just feeding you a line of bull by saying if we wasn't spending that money overseas, we'd be spending it on poor people and the
True.
homeless. They don't want to spend the money that you got right now on poor people and homeless. So what makes you think if you withdrew all of that money from overseas that suddenly they were going to have a change of heart and become benevolent to poor and homeless people? It's a bunch of crap.
But
It's all it's just a line that they spew because it sounds good.
do you guys know where America first started?
I remember Reagan used to say it.
No. America First, and this was actually the name of a movement, was the pro-Nazi movement, called itself America First in the
Really?
late 1930s and early 1940s.
Mm.
It was called America First. Actually, I'm not a big Rachel Maddow fan, but she has an excellent series podcast called Ultra, which basically is all about the pro-Nazi movement in this country. And that's what they called themselves. Lindbergh and all those other racists, they called it America First. And I may have mentioned this before, but if you guys have not seen the footage of the Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden in 1939, just Google on YouTube the Nazi rally, which I think had about 30,000 people there. It was the largest indoor Nazi rally ever held, indoor, including Germany. So that's what America First originally was, and that ought to cause us to think twice.
Yeah, not a good look. Not a good look. Not look good at all. See here. Try to pick up something for the audience. Nat writes, isolationism never worked except for the dictator's pockets. Yeah, I mean, it's the 21st century. Isolationism sounds dumb in the age of the internet. It just sounds dumb. It makes no sense. It's counterintuitive. You have to engage. It's just like if you started a small business, you wouldn't just sit in your office. You would get out there and network. You would go to conferences. You would interact. You would try to find a business that where maybe the both of y'all could make money together off of y'all services. Why would we think that our relationship with the world should be any different? It's just common sense. And so I love the idea of kind of bringing back, I love the idea of more people being able to, if you really work hard then you can get a home. And if you really work hard, then maybe you can get you a vacation little spot and you can put your kid through college and you can retire. That's what I think it's all about. And if you create something great along the way, great. But that should be the bare bones, right? If you're talented, you're not criminally minded, you want to work hard, you God-fearing, you should be able to go work and get that. And that has been taken away from people. And it ain't the Democrats. It ain't the transgenders. It's people like Elon Musk. That's the people behind it. So I'm glad he's gone, and I hope he never comes back. And I don't have no sympathy for him whatsoever, and I don't trust him. And I guarantee he's going to come up again sometime in the next 4 years.
You know, maybe we shouldn't consider somebody's personal life, but sometimes it tells you something about the person. The lowest, the minimum number of children he has is 14. Okay, and there may be more with a host of different women. And I think it's fair to say that when you have that many kids with a bunch of different women, it's kind of hard to be a real father figure. And so, and I think a couple
That's
of at least
subjective.
one or two are suing him for, I think, support, whatever. But to me,
It's not
somebody,
subjective. That's an
subjective.
absolute truth.
That's subjective. That you
That's
can't
an
say
absolute
you can't
truth.
say that people have multiple that does not. I mean, especially in the United States of America. If you want to take it to a biblical standpoint, what about Solomon? What about all these people in biblical that
No,
had multiple wives and
here's
multiple children that have we stand on their principles and morals, and we read Proverbs to go through and learn wisdoms from these men who had multiple wives and multiple children. So I don't buy that. Especially in the United States of America,
it doesn't matter what it doesn't matter what you
no,
it
man,
doesn't matter
no.
what you buy. It doesn't
That's why
matter
I
what
said
you
it's
buy,
subjective. That's
Terrence.
why I said it's subjective. Phil can't sit up here and spout this stuff about people with multiple children and multiple baby mamas that he don't know nothing about. You can't judge a person like that. You can't. That's why I say
It's
it's
not a
subjective.
judgment. It's not a
no, it's a
judgment. It's
fact.
not a
That's a
It's a
judgment,
fact.
subjective
Terrence.
statement. That's subjective.
It's a fact of the matter. This is something that came up, and Cam Newton recently had to be humble behind this. And this is the very real thing. If you father multiple children by multiple different women in multiple places, you cannot be there every day for that child. You can't be at every basketball game. You can't be with them when they come home from school. You can't be with them at eating at dinner at 8 different locations every day. And your absence has an impact on that child that prevents you from being the effective parent that you can be. Doesn't mean you're a bad person, doesn't mean that you're not trying your best, but what it does mean
It
is
does
that you're
mean you're a
not
bad
is that
person,
you're
I think, to
not
some
That's
degree.
subjective. That's
is
subjective.
that your by your lack of presence, that is having an impact on the child,
And
whether
it's
you like it or
irresponsible.
That's
not.
subjective. That's so subjective. That's so.
That's not subjective.
My great grandmother was married 4 times and had 13 kids. That's subjective. That's bullcrap. And she was a great woman.
And
She was
I
married
bet
4
well,
times and had
you know
13
what?
kids. That's subjective.
You know what,
Yeah, I
Terrence?
think it's a dig. That's a dig for me and my
Okay.
perspective. I think it's
Well,
a dig for people who doesn't have that play. The Bible says you're allowed to have as many kids as you can take care of. That's what you're supposed to do. So that's why I said whenever Phil's spouting all that stuff out, that's extremely subjective. You can't say that. You can't say that because you didn't walk that life. You don't know that. You can't say that. It's subjective.
You're telling me that let's take Musk. You're telling me that a guy who has, and I'm talking about the man here, okay? Maybe it's chauvinistic, but I've read enough to believe that the relationship between a father and his son and a father and his daughter is the most important relationship. Not to minimize what mothers do, but that everything I've heard, church and otherwise. And you're telling me that it's possible, assuming the principle that if you're going to bring someone to the world, you have an obligation to meet their needs. And I don't mean just financially, I mean emotionally and otherwise. Are you saying, Tarris, that a guy who has 14 kids with a host of different women is able to be a true, appropriate father to all those kids?
If he's allowed to be, yes. If he's allowed, who can say what an appropriate father is? Because you might have a child
The
who
kids.
doesn't require.
Kids.
I'm saying right. Who might
The
not
kids will
require
tell
that.
you.
Who might not require that every single. I mean, it's
What kid doesn't
completely.
require their parents, Terrace? That's the man. Listen, boy, I tell you, Terrace. You say, and I try to be nice,
You don't
brother, on this
listen. You
program.
guys
I
don't listen.
really
You guys
do.
cut me off. You guys don't let me
But
complete
you
a
say
thought. You
some
never let me
ignorant
complete a
shit.
thought.
Pardon my words. You say some ignorant shit sometimes on this program, bro. And to say that a kid is okay that doesn't need the presence of their father or mother in their life, man, come on, man. Somebody ought to slap you for that,
I
Terrace.
have never,
That's ignorant.
an advocate for fathers, I've never said that the father doesn't need there. I'm an advocate for the father needs to be there more and more than the woman. So I never said that. So when that's where we get into these programs. I say something, you guys take it and you guys run with it from your own perspective. And y'all,
So Terrence, how often?
I never
So to be
once
a
said
good
that a
father,
man
how
should not
often
be
should
there.
you,
You
Terrence, to
should be
be a
there.
good father? To be a good father, how often should you see your kids?
As much as you are allowed to see them. That's what I said. Elon Musk can be a good father to his children as much as he's allowed to. If he's allowed to be a good father to his children, he can be. It's subjective.
Terrence,
If he's allowed
he's a
to.
billionaire. He's a
If he's a
billionaire.
so
He's a
why would he be going
billionaire.
through? So why is he going through child
I
support
doubt
court
he
and
has
family
difficulty
court
getting
and all these kind of?
I doubt
Why,
he has difficulty getting access to his kids, bro. He's a
That's why he.
billionaire.
That's why he. That's
I
why
doubt
he
he has
sent
difficulty.
Doge. He sent Doge to the family court department because he had one baby mama who was disgruntled and tried to take him to family court. So he sent Doge to do. Come on, man. Y'all can't talk to me about this. Y'all because Elon Musk, is he's allowed to be a father to his 14 children. You can't say what a kind of father those children need. He
Well,
is
I
the only
guess I
person.
guess what you're
He's the
saying is
only person.
I
Him.
guess what you're I
If
guess
he's got financially can take care of these kids, he can fly to wherever these kids got to go, be there virtually. He can do whatever he needs to be a father of those kids. Just because it's not a conventional way that you might think so, that's subjective. And I never once said a father doesn't need to be there. I'm an advocate for fathers being there. I think fathers need to be in the kids' lives more than the mothers. I think that the fathers in
Terrace,
the families' lives are way more important. 80% show that fatherless child are in prison and broken homes and all that kind of this. I'm not
Terrace,
saying
can
that
I
at all.
sum it up?
No. Hold on, Phil. I got to clarify this because that's what you guys do often on y'all trying to make me seem like I'm crazy and you take my words and you take them out of context. I'm an advocate for fathers being in the home. A huge advocate. And then Kevin says, I say I'm talking shit because I say
Well,
that I'm not.
you can't be an advocate for fathers in the home and a guy got 14 kids in 14 different homes and you know he's not in those homes on a regular basis.
That's subjective.
You can't
Is my question.
that okay. No, that's not subjective. That's a fact. You're either there or you're not. That's not subjective. And that's the problem that I have with you is you want to try to make factual things subjective. You're either in the household or you're not in the household. It's that simple. And you can't be in 14 different households at the same time. It's that simple, brother. You can do math. You got more. See, that's what frustrates me about you, Terrence. You get on this and you want to make these points, but you just don't use simple common sense and logic. You know what I'm saying is correct. You know that you can't possibly be an effective father with 14 different kids in 14 different locations with 14 different women. You ought to have enough common sense to know. That's like if you have 14 different jobs, Terrence, you ain't going to do 14 different jobs well, my brother. That's not to say you might not get some work done, but you're not going to be the fucking best at 14, excuse my language, at 14 different jobs because this just makes me mad because you know better than this. You got to be smarter than this to understand that you cannot be effective at 14 different things in 14 different locations and say that that's subjective. That's just not.
Once again, I'm going to defend myself. What I said was subjective. When Phil started disparaging Elon's character for trying to have multiple baby mamas and multiple kids, my grandmother had four husbands and 14 kids, 12 kids. So I'm going to defend somebody's honor like that because that's subjective. He can't say, and that's all I said. And then I'm saying it's subjective. That's subjective. He's assassinating Elon Musk's character by saying, oh, well, we got to look at this guy's character because he does have four babies. That's white supremacy talking. That's what white supremacy sounds like. What Phil just said, oh, we don't want to damage his character, but he does have four kids and four baby mamas and all these kids running around here and look at his character. And he's got child support. That's what they do.
So,
That's
so
what
you know what's funny? You know what's funny? You're sitting up here defending Elon Musk, and I guarantee you, Elon Musk would not defend a brother that had 14 different kids. You know what he would call them? He would call them one of those people who don't deserve the SNAP benefits and the
That's untrue.
Medicaid that you saying that those people don't. That's exactly what they would say about a brother that had 14 kids. And you defending this cat. Man, get out of here.
I'm defending the disparaging statements that Phil Hemlich was saying about Elon Musk. That's what I said was subjective. That's what I said.
As they say in the news business, I stand by those statements.
All right, I didn't want to get in that. I was gonna sit back and watch all of that, but
I seen you eating your pop. I seen you eating your popcorn back there.
Yeah, I got some water and everything. I'm like,
you set that up. You
like,
set that up.
where's this going? I want to see where this goes. Kevin writes, Kevin is triggered. Kevin, that's the first time we saw you triggered, Rick. That the first time? I think so. You was
Yeah,
triggered.
and by the way, Pastor Aldridge,
I apologize. I'm gonna pray for myself tonight. Y'all
Pastor,
pray for me.
No, what I'm asking is, does your congregation listen to this podcast?
There's probably some that do.
They should. They should listen. They should listen to the Phil try to talk about Elon Musk, and then me take it into biblical form and talk about Solomon, the most wise man who's ever been in the Bible, who's had multiple wives, who has multiple concubines, who's God used. And so you can't say that. It's subjective.
That's why they call it tarris. That's why they call it the Old Covenant as opposed to the New Covenant.
Hey, I'll take that Old Covenant over the New Covenant.
Oh,
I'll read Proverbs all day long on anything in the New Tournament. That's it. You can't, and that's subjective too. You can't tell me what God wants.
Phil says, I would too. Oh, yeah, that's all I got, guys. Last part.
Hold on. We got one that we briefly. That's the Sesame Street. The Sesame Street.
Oh, you want to talk about Sesame Street?
Yeah.
Oh, let's save it.
All right.
I'm down with it. Yeah, I mean, Sesame Street is being called out. People are saying, well, number one, it's under an attack from the Republicans and Donald Trump. They're saying that it was bias or something like that. But this is Pride Month, and Sesame Street, they posted something, and a lot of people had a problem with it. People are saying that, they had some characters or some people that ostensibly on the surface you might seem to think that they are LGBTQ. And a lot of people were saying that this is an example of how Sesame Street is grooming children. And of course, I just don't see it that way. I think it's really about empathy and learning that everybody can be different and you still should be respected. But what do you think? I mean, again, it seems like there's an attack on Sesame Street. One, they're saying that it's biased against Republicans, which I don't believe. And secondly, they're saying some of the programming is grooming children to be gay or lesbian or whatever the paranoia is. But
I think this is very. Go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead, Phil. No, I was going to say Tarris should start this because he brought it up, but either one.
I think this is very similar to this thing about banning books that have, I don't know, racial themes or gay themes out of all these school libraries. Here's what I say about that. I think if kids are even reading anything, I'm happy. Okay, I don't care what books they read. Okay, at least they're reading. Okay, instead of playing video games or something. And as far as this thing goes, I mean, I may not agree with the themes or whatever, but I would much rather my kids watching Sesame Street than watching some violent, sexually oriented thing on another station or playing video games. So, I mean, why attack positive educational programming for kids where they're trying to teach them to spell and add and that kind of stuff?
Because Republicans are obsessed with sex and sexuality. And this whole notion of wanting to police what people do in their private lives and in their bedrooms. They're this party of freedom and hey, everybody should have freedom except for the freedom of things that they don't like. Look, Sesame Street is not doing anything differently than they've always done. Sesame Street has always been about inclusion, diversity, and helping kids learn at a young age how to be friendly and get along with everybody,
But
right?
it also learn skills, academic skills. Would you
Yeah, for
agree,
sure.
Kevin?
Absolutely. No, it's I mean it's primarily an educational programming, but
Yeah.
it also focuses on trying to teach kids things about character and behavior and tolerance and getting along with people. Like that's all Sesame Street is like everybody's friends and getting along heck, they even get along with a guy who lives in a garbage can. I mean, come on. The Sesame Street covers the gamut of all different types of people, and that's what Sesame Street has always been. And this notion that somehow or another, like this is the great fear of people who suffer from homophobia, which is it's the craziest thing, which is there's this belief that somehow gay and transgender people are going to rub off on people who are not that way. And that's what's behind the whole grooming thing, is that somehow you're going to make my kids something that they're not. And I just think that that is the most detrimental thought process to this whole conversation, that what this is all about. This whole notion that by teaching kids about Pride Month, that somehow it's grooming naturally heterosexual boys and girls to be lesbian and gay and transgender. I think it's just absolutely ridiculous and it's insulting, I think, to members of the LGBTQ community. And it's like, grow up, man. Just grow up at some point and just deal with it. There are people out there who are not like you, who are different. It's what makes the world go round. Quit worrying about what other people are doing behind closed doors. Why do you care? Like, that's the thing that just gets to me. Like, why do you care? Like, I'm not a member of the LGBTQ community. I have no desire to be, but that doesn't mean that somebody is that's a part of that community shouldn't be allowed to live their life and do what they want to do. I don't care. It doesn't affect me in one single way. And so be yourself. Let people be themselves and do what they do and what you do in your home and in your I could care less. And get a life. That's what people need to do. If you spend more time worrying about what somebody else doing, you need to get you somebody.
Here is the post. So Sesame Street posted this on looks like it's their X account, their Twitter account. And they posted this for Pride Month. On our street, everyone is welcome. Together, let's build a world where every person and family feels loved and respected for who they are. Happy #Pride Month. And then you see what appears to be, various hands outstretched, holding hands across in a horizontal fashion. For people who are not looking at this for whatever reason, you can hear it. But clearly what they're saying is, everybody's inclusive, which that's what Sesame Street should be, and that's what I think we should be teaching young people. That you are accepted for who you are, and you should accept people for who they are, just because they might look a little different or sound a little different, or maybe they've got a different income. Doesn't matter. They're all people, and I just felt like that's what I used to get out of Sesame Street. Sesame Street just taught me a lot of compassion. Like Kevin said, we forget that guy was homeless, right? That was they was trying to teach you, like, yeah, he's the homeless guy living in a trash can, but he's a good guy. He's not someone who you have to be afraid of. And
when you posted this one, the reason why I wanted to bring this one up is because I've done some research on the Sesame Street and the origins of it and how it came about and how it was produced in Harlem by some think tank of psychologists, black psychologists, to target on a demographic to educate young black students that were disparagingly low comparing to white students. So they wanted to have Sesame Street to equal the playing field. And what they found with Sesame Street specifically is that black students were out achieving white students. It was off the charts. So when white supremacy found this out, they started directing the programming away from Electric Company and things like that to other programming to divert from black kids from learning. So we fast forward to now to where Sesame Street, they see over all these years, 30, 40, 50, 60 years, how influential and how easy it was to, because they were trying to do this at the same time they were feeding black kids bad programming on TV, disparaging figures like black people eating watermelon and just bad figures. So they wanted to reprogram black people's minds. So they understand how the programming was working. So now we look at what Sesame Street's trying to do in the white supremacy rim of the Republican Party. Because the Republican Party is not all racist, but the white supremacy rim of the Republican Party is pinpointing this specific stuff within Sesame Street and say, we know how powerful this programming is, and we want to attack it. I don't agree with it. I'm just being the messenger of following the history and the path of saying when Sesame Street was originated, in the origin, it was originated to help black communities. It was originated in Harlem. The backdrop is Harlem. The writers were from Harlem. There was this think tank from black people, psychologists, to know how to study black youth and teach them how to learn. And on the same equal level, right when segregation integration was coming. So black people, just like in the 20s, after Reconstruction, and Blake said black people and white people are going to be in the same playing field, and black people started off the charts with white people, beating them in government, classism, wealth distribution, everything. Black people went in, and they came into the Tulsa and the massacres and things like that. This is nothing but white supremacy's hand, like Phil said, trying to dictate what people can learn, because they know how powerful avenues like Sesame Streets are on spreading love, spreading diversity, because it was done by black psychologists who knew exactly how. Because I always say that whenever I'm around white people, I'm like, when we talk about trying to convert black people to away from the Democratic Party to the Republican Party, and I say this will work, and the white people's like, oh, that's not going to work to get black people. I'm like, white supremacy from the ages 40, 50, 60, those guys, I'm telling you, man, they think they are so smart. That's why I get on this program, so I can like show a different perspective. I think we're all on the same. We're trying to get to the same place of equality and things like that. But I just think that when I see white supremacy doing it from a different perspective, I like to bring it out. And it might come off kind of crazy, but I hope what I said with the Sesame Street thing brings a little light about how they have used Sesame Street in the past and how they're trying to use it again in the present day to keep their hands and their thumbs on top of spreading good news.
Tarris, while you were talking, somebody writes, Kamikia writes, who's going to tell him that the GOP is a party of white supremacy?
I don't believe that.
Hey, take it easy.
I don't believe that. I don't believe that. I believe that just like the Democratic Party has far left extremists that you guys don't subscribe to. The radical far left, you guys don't subscribe to them. There's a far right MAGA who common sense conservatives do not subscribe to. And that's what I like to, when I come on here and I try to let you guys know what MAGA is talking about, I don't subscribe. I am a common sense conservative Republican, black heterosexual male. That's in a nutshell. So that's like that. How you guys try to paint me?
And let me say, Tarris, I think you were a little misunderstood. In fairness to you, on the Elon Musk thing, I think what you were just saying about him is that he can multitask.
He's doing. That's subjective as well, Phil.
All right.
Yeah.
I was just trying to defend you a little bit there. That's all.
I think Kamikia is right. You know, the Republican Party is the party of white supremacy. Although we probably know there's some white supremacists in the Democrat Party as well. Just look at what they stand for. Like if you look at the extreme arm of the Democrat Party, the so-called left, if they got everything they wanted, you would get things like, I don't know, a repeal of, Citizens United. You'll probably get a single-payer healthcare system. You probably get more liberals on the Supreme Court. If you look at what the extreme right wants, what they want is the destruction of the civil rights institution. What they want is the mass exodus of everybody that's not skin color white. What I think those are two polar opposites. They are not the same. What the left wants on the extreme and what the right wants on the extreme are not the same. They are not the same at all. And we're seeing it play out with Donald Trump in Project 2025. What they want is to destroy the federal government, which would basically mean that if you're super powerful and wealthy, you can do whatever you want to do with no impunity.
Yeah. And here's the thing that I think is true. Like Republicans always like to point out that it was the Democrats that at one point in time were the party of slavery and all of this, and the Republicans were the ones that freed the slaves. And yes, there is truth in that history, but what they often don't tell you is how the wheels of that changed and turned, and how the Republican Party became something different. I mean, look, you only need to look at more modern day policy, and I always say this: I think there are racists in both parties, right? There's just the fact of the matter that that's truth. You've got racist Democrats and you've got racist Republicans, but what I tend to look at is the policy. And there's no question that in recent history, the Democrats have been the party that has advanced more policy that has benefited people of color in this country. And the Republicans have taken a framework of less government is better. Yeah, it's better for white people in this country, because the reality is that the federal government has been the only thing that has stopped the white supremacists and those who would want to subjugate people of color in this country from doing it. The federal government has been the only blockade. Otherwise, they would run roughshod. We saw it in the Reconstruction period that as soon as the federal government pulled federal troops out of protecting, black people in the South, what did the white racists there do? They overran all the black businesses, intimidated people, and then you saw the rising of Jim Crow in the South. So the federal government has been the best defense that black people have had against white supremacy in this country. And of late, it's been the Democratic Party. I wish the Republicans were more like the Republican Party of old, but they've got too many in that population who subscribe to this notion, and you hear it in the rhetoric that comes out today about this anti-wokeness. I looked at one of the comments of one of the ladies on the Sesame Street, and she said, Americans are fatigued by the spectrum of perceived victimhood, right? The emphasis on the word perceived.
Perceived.
These are people who don't believe that the isms, or want to believe that the isms don't exist in this country anymore, while at the same time, this is a woman who wants to talk about perceived victimhood, while at the same time saying, I've got a problem with Sesame Street giving LGBTQ people representation. That's not perceived victimhood. That's you outright saying that you got a problem with LGBTQ representation. That's not perceived victimhood. That is victimhood, right? That is you saying, that's a specific group of people saying, we don't want to see your brand of stuff on TV in front of our kids. And that's exactly what minority groups are fighting against, is that type of exclusion, or saying that their issues and that their representation is not good enough to be on TV like you. And they don't see that. They're blind to that. They don't see that. But then they'll want to say, oh, that's woke or that's perceived victimhood. No, it's very real victimhood. And those are the attitudes that lend to that.
Yeah, I got no problem, with people having different opinions, but oftentimes you can tell there's people that are operating with a little bit of information deficit, as we all are on some of these issues. Barbara writes, neither party is giving black folks tangibles. I've heard that before, but I think that's a little bit outdated. Like you can make that argument. I can make the argument that one party has given far more tangibles to black people than the other party. That would be the Democrat Party. But MAGA is something different. You know, your MAGA is the biggest threat to public policy that would benefit the working class and minorities that I've ever seen. And what you have to understand is you also have to protect your interest. Like, our grandparents, their grandparents fought real hard for all those federal civil rights protections, which, whether you know it or not, Barbara, they are protecting your family and you in ways you don't even know. And that's how protections are sometimes. The best protections are the ones you never need, but it's nice to know they're there. And what we're seeing is systematically Republican Party is trying to destroy that policy legacy. Now, typically when I hear people use that language, tangibles, they talking about reparations. And listen, there is nothing about the modern day Republican MAGA Party that would lend me to believe that they are in any way capable of ever passing any reparations. In fact, that's the
Never
exact
happened.
opposite of everything they stand for right
And the
now.
Democrats are going to do it.
And if you're looking at one of the two parties that is more likely to push reparations, that would 100% be the Democrat Party. And as a matter of fact, there's a sister right now that's pushing for it. They've always pushed for it.
That's just a ceremonial bill. That's a ceremonial push. That's not even. That's something they've been doing for a long time.
It's only ceremonial up until the point that they get power and push, and people have organized behind them to make it come true. I'm not suggesting that the fight is over when you have Democrats in power. What I'm saying is, if reparations is your issue, you have no hope at all of ever getting reparations from the MAGA party and Republicans at all. It's never going to happen.
Well, I've always said that you have no hope of getting reparations in the form of black people getting a check or some kind of monetary benefit like that type of reparations, period, Republican or Democrat. Because here's what I agree with what Terry said. While you are more likely to get it from Democrats, you're not going to get it from Democrats, because at the end of the day, what it comes down to is there not enough white people in this country that are going to sign off on black people getting a check, Republican or Democrat. And that's the truth.
It depends on how you package it. It depends on how you package it.
It don't matter how you package it, brother. It don't matter how you package it, because the one thing that it comes down to is who's getting a check and who's not. And people are not going to cut in these days and times. I think there was a point in time in American history where America had the capacity to do that. Back when it was promised, the whole 40 acres and a mule, that unkept promise is always going to be the great broken promise of this country. And I think that was your best opportunity to do that thing. I just think it's just too hard to push through. I mean, you had the brother in Baltimore. They had they had the majority. It had passed both the houses and the Senate, and the brother it was a brother that vetoed it. Right? Vetoed the reparations bill. So that tells me, man, that's just why I always say, whenever that comes up, whenever Elizabeth Warren or whoever the elected official of the day is, I always say, man, a lot of that is performative, because I just don't ever believe that that's going anywhere. That's just my opinion.
Not. I mean, what we've seen in modern day in the last 10, 15 years is that almost anything is possible. If Donald Trump, who is a 2-time impeached, 34-time felon with all the negative stuff on him, if he can get reelected, if we can see the types of people that we see being elected right now, it's really about time and packaging. Anything is possible. And with that brother in Baltimore, people have to make up their minds about, what they want. Because I've heard it go both ways when it comes to reparations. I've heard people say things like, well, we don't need another study. And what I've said is, well, it has to start with a study, because we're talking about public policy, and the politicians have to be able to justify it to constituents and whomever else. Well, in this case, that's what the brother said. The brother said, enough with the studies. We know what the problem is. I'm just going to get to the business of it. So, I think when we talk about these reparations,
I support and I agree with that. I agree with that philosophy, because I've expressed the same thing here in Cincinnati. It's like, look, we know what the issues are. We've done a million studies. You don't need any. You can pull out any one of 50 different dusty books that have examined the problem in Cincinnati and around the country. We know what it is. What we've always lacked, is my argument, is the political will to put the cash on the table. And that's really what it comes down to, is and that is what I'm skeptical of, is the political will to put the money on the table.
Reparations on a federal level, it lies with that 31% of the electorate that didn't vote. That's where we get that. Until those people get off the couch and get into the game, it ain't gonna never happen. Not with the electorate the way it is right now. Those 30% of people, and a lot of those black people, are all about reparations. You got to get off the couch and start voting and make reparations an issue in each and every election, because it really starts on the states on my level. It starts with those state reps that go to Congress. It starts with what's happening in your state. But some of the same people that talk all that jazz about reparations, I found, unfortunately, not everybody, they don't vote. They don't vote. So how you think reparations gonna happen, and you're pro reparations, you're a single issue voter, that's a main issue for you. You're not even voting. So, I hear it, but I'll say it again. The Republicans, you can't even bring up reparations. Don't even bring it up. right? With
but
the
it's more.
Democrats, at least it's a conversation.
But it's more just like the Democrats that bring this up every year. I think. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. It's a bill that they pass every year to try to do the study, and it's like a ceremony. So
Nah.
the newliest elected state representative, who's black, who's the newest member of the Black Caucus, she's the one who presented the bill this time. Am I mistaken on that?
No, this is a U.S. congressman. I forget this. She's a part of the squad. She's bald. Forget Ayanna Presley. Presley.
Is she the one who presented it's like every year they do this? It's a ceremonial bill.
This ain't no ceremonial thing. She's serious about it.
Okay.
This ain't no ceremonial thing. She said the time is right now. She said at a time in which we're looking at Donald Trump and Republicans destroy the civil rights legacy. This is what she said in a press conference. I'm paraphrasing. At a time in which we're seeing the Republicans destroy black people's policy legacy, we should be talking about reparations. She is a Democrat. You ain't gonna never hear, I'll say never, but I haven't heard any Republicans come out and make a real stance for reparations because it's political kryptonite right now for Republicans. And it will always be because they are the party of white fragility. And white fragility will never vote, as you were saying, Tarris, and you were saying, Kevin. It's going to be a hard sell for white fragility to vote for black empowerment, black economic empowerment. It's going to be real hard to sell.
What do you think, Phil? What do you think, Phil? You think the white people will vote for black people to get money?
He's like, get me out of here.
Because I know Phil's got a lot to say because he's been listening. But before he goes, the one thing I would like to say,
he interrupted me before I even could talk. Go ahead.
As far as the Democrats, one of the things that I would like to see is I would like to see white Democrats leading the charge on reparations. Too often you see Ayanna Presley or you see other African Americans who are in the Democratic Party leading the charge on reparations. I would love to see more white Democrats in leadership talk about reparations and lead that charge. Now, I mentioned Elizabeth Warren because she's one of the few that I've kind of seen at least sort of kind of talk about this. But I would love to see, this is a conversation. Look, you're not going to get a ton of pushback from black people on reparations. They're not the ones who have to be convinced. The one who have to be convinced are white folks. And that's only a conversation that white Democrats, I think, can lead in terms of speaking to their brothers about why and sisters about why they need to get on board. Black folks talking to white people about reparations ain't gonna cut through. White folks got to start leading the charge on that conversation. Those who are sincere about it. But that's what I'm saying, Nathan. I'm skeptical about it. It's like it's one thing for whites to sit back and back up black people who are talking about it, secretly knowing it's not going to go anywhere, versus them taking the charge and leading the effort and being out front with it. I would be more impressed if I saw more white Democrats doing that.
Nathan, you were talking about white Republicans, and what was the word you used there? Fragile or something?
Fragility.
Well, let me say right now, no, I'm white, I'm Republican, I am not frigid, okay?
Fragile.
Oh, that I am. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Right, sorry, I got confused. Sorry. But, well, obviously, I don't think we want to get into a full reparations argument now. I'd be happy to do it another time. I would say that, where does it end? We killed millions of Native Americans. And, if we're going to do it for one group that has been horribly victimized, we got to do it for the other. I'd also point out, as far as this issue about Democrats and civil rights and stuff, if you go back to the 60s and the 50s, and I know we're not there now, but in those eras, the worst racists in Congress were the Southern Democrats.
Yep.
Yeah.
And there were, and well, they were all Democrats, yeah. And and interestingly enough, there was quite a few, maybe not a majority, but quite a few Republicans that were strong civil rights supporters. I think Percy out of Illinois, Kenneth Keating, New York, and there's Jacob Javits, and there was a lot of Republicans that were very strong on civil rights. So things can change.
Well, that's all I got, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Appreciate you. And we'll be back on Friday. I think on Friday, I said, I think I was out in a different head at that point. I said we weren't coming back. I think Kevin said something. My bad. We'll be back on Friday at 1 p.m. Appreciate you.
Hey,
Terrence?
Nathan, before we sign off,
Yeah.
I do want to apologize to Terrace. I do. I want to extend that
Uh-oh.
apology as we get in debate, brother. It wasn't personal. I just want to say that, we argue and we go back and forth, and it sometimes get heated. But if I offended you in any
No,
way, I want to extend that. I want to extend that apology because
I appreciate that.
I think you do know how I feel about you, even though
Okay,
sometimes
what
I
about
don't, I
appreciate it.
apologies?
Hold
don't, I
on,
don't,
I
I
appreciate
don't
it.
like everything you say.
Hey,
I
what about
appreciate that.
apologies for this guy? Huh? How about that?
I appreciate.
See, there's that fragility show. There's
Yeah,
that
yeah.
white fragility that
Like, what
Nathan was
about
talking
me?
about showing up again right there.
What about
That's exactly what he was talking about right there, Phil. We wasn't even talking about you.
But
I
I'm
was
not frigid.
apologizing to
I'm
Terrence.
fragile, not
But
frigid.
I want to say that I lost my virginity a long time ago on this show. I'm telling you, the first time I got off this show, I'd go home to my wife. I'd be like, man, I think they hate me. They ain't going to invite me back. But now I enjoy you guys, and I appreciate you guys having me on and having the divergent point. So I appreciate that. But I got thick skin, brother.
Glad to have you.
Tarris, since you started appearing on this show, I got to ask you this: has your alcohol consumption gone up?
I quit drinking 8 years ago, sir.
Oh,
I'm alcohol free.
okay.
I'm an advocate for sobriety and alcohol being poisoning, baby. Not this kid. God delivered me once again, baby. Let's go.
Hey, gentlemen, have a great Tuesday.
All right.
And to the audience, thank you for being here, and we'll be back on Friday. All right. Have a great day. Great week.